Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
Welcome to episode 68 of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name is Chris Hollifield. Welcome to my show. IamSaltLake.com is the website where you can find everything out about the podcast. You can listen to all the previous episodes. You can download them right there online. Also links for iTunes and Stitcher Radio, as well as all of the contact information, which I highly recommend you use. Drop me an email, call me up on the voicemail, get in touch with me. Let me know what you think of the show. This episode, I had the opportunity to sit down with Richie T. Steadman. He is the producer of the Radio from Hell show, the X96 Radio from Hell show. He also does the Culture Hall podcast as well as the Salt Lake City Comedy Festival. And he's a busy guy. We've been playing tag back and forth for a few months, and I finally got an opportunity to sit down with him and find out his story and find out a little bit more about him, which we're going to jump into here in just a second. But so take a listen to the interview, find out about somebody like Richie T that's doing some really cool stuff here in Salt Lake City, and let me know what you think of the show. Thank you so much, everybody, for the iTunes reviews, the emails. Without all of your feedback, I wouldn't probably keep doing the podcast. So thank you very much. Let's jump now into that conversation that I had with Richie T. Steadman. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. What I like to do is just kind of start at the beginning, have the people kind of, the guests on my show kind of introduce themselves. Okay. Kind of tell what they're all about, the projects that they're involved in. I know you're involved with a whole bunch of different projects that I kind of want to delve into. Okay. And we'll jump around and. Well,
shoot. Where do we start as far as all that stuff goes?
You start out with your name there.
My name is Richie. I was actually Richard, birth given, and Rick until the time I turned 18.
Okay.
And then when I went to college, I decided that Richie would be more fun.
Where'd you go to school at?
Southern Utah University.
Oh, a party school.
Yeah. Sure.
Were you a party animal?
Oh, yeah. Well, here was the thing is Southern Utah University down in Cedar City. It is a party school in that if you want to have fun there, you can have fun, but it's by no means like a drink and woo-woo kind of thing. Yeah. Or at least that wasn't my experience. I just kind of did stuff that like the school was offering all the time. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it was like, oh yeah, there were a lot of people that were like, this town sucks. There's nothing to do in this town. And I was always just kind of doing whatever the university offered.
So what was your major then at school?
Theater. Majored in theater, minored in dance.
Wow, so you're a dancer.
Yeah.
Like a ballet dancer?
It was modern.
Modern
dance. Tap. Did some tap dancing. Okay. I was on the ballroom team for a year. And then I also did a musical singing and dancing group called Acclamation, which is kind of like the BYU Young Ambassadors minus the religion. Okay. So I did that kind of stuff. Why did I get there? Oh, because I changed my name to Richie. So I thought about going by Thomas, which is my middle name.
Yeah, it doesn't fit
at college, and I was like, that's not right. And then I thought about going back because, from when I was born until I was 5, it was Ricky, and I thought maybe I could pull off a Ricky, but at that time it was kind of Ricky Martin, and it was a little, I'm not tan enough. To be a Ricky. So I went with Richie, and then I was like, but I have Richie T, and so.
Well, you spent a lot of time analyzing your name.
Well, I had to. It was a name change.
Yeah.
So Chris,
I'm just Chris,
Yeah. But see, if you were to take on something else, what's your middle name?
Albert.
So you could be Chris A. That's not very good.
Yeah.
Albie. Chris Albie is a great name.
Yeah, there you go. But, some of the guys I work with say I should go by Albert just because that's a tough name,
Yeah.
But
watch out for Albert.
Yeah, watch out. So.
But Albie, I don't know, think about that, Chris Albie. If you ever have like a DJ name or something like that.
So you went to school in Southern Utah. Mm-hmm. You graduated, or I'm assuming you graduated, right? And then you came back to Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I started SUU in 1998, went for a year, and then went on a 2-year religiously affiliated vacation.
Like that.
Yeah. Came home and then went right back down there for 4 more years. So I graduated in May of 2005.
Where'd you serve a mission at?
Cleveland.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I bet you were excited when you got that call, right? You were like, why did I go to Japan or something,
Well, I think I was around the first wave of missionaries are getting called to China rumor,
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm cool enough to go to China. God would call me to China, and then I got it, and it was like, God would call me to Cleveland. What is this?
Did you ever make it up to Erie, Pennsylvania?
Of course.
I lived there for a little while.
I've been to Erie, but we didn't, as far as the mission goes, I didn't get to go to Erie.
Yeah, I lived, a few months I lived there. And
for what? What were you doing?
I just wanted to get out of Utah for a little bit, and I had some friends up that way, and they were in Erie, and moved there. I was a little too young, I think, when I moved away. I was about 18, you know. I just really wasn't ready for that. So I came back to Utah, and then I moved to the eastern Wilkes-Barre area of Pennsylvania. I don't know if you ever made it that far east. It's on the opposite side of Pennsylvania.
Was that a better fit?
It was. I was a little more mentally ready to move out, and lived there for about 5 years.
Jeez.
And then I came back to Utah.
It's a kind of an interesting thing to think about, that Pennsylvania is where you need to go to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Both times you were like, Pennsylvania works.
Yeah, it was, it was that time in my life where I didn't really appreciate Salt Lake City or Utah yet. Mm-hmm. And then when I came back, it was like getting involved with, I think getting involved with projects helps you love a city.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, because you get to know the people through the project or those kind of things.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
So anyways, you came back to Salt Lake. How did you team up with X96? Share that story.
So when I was in college, I studied radio ever since I got back from my mission.
Yeah.
And I think it was the fall of 2003, I put together down in college, it was called the Power 91 Radio Summit.
Okay, so you did college radio.
Uh-huh.
Then. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And what this radio summit essentially was a chance for radio professionals from Las Vegas and from Salt Lake to come down to SUU and talk about what it would be like to work in radio and, you know, how they got to where they were at and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, hey, you know what, let's do this. And one of the people that I invited to come down was Artie Fufkin, who used to be a DJ on X96 because he had attended SUU.
Okay.
But that didn't work because he didn't want to come down. And so once that happened, he kind of passed it along to Radio from Hell, Carrie, Bill, and Gina. And then both Bill and Carrie said, hey, you know what, Gina, why don't you go down? It'll be a great story for the radio. Why don't you go down and teach the kids and, you know, we'll send you. And so she came down and I got a chance to meet and talk with her. And I said, hey, you know what, I think I should intern for you guys this Christmas. So the Christmas of 2003, I didn't really do anything. I just kind of sat in the studio while they did their shows. And then they went on Christmas break, and then I went back to school and didn't talk much of it. That next summer, I worked for another radio station, but then that next Christmas, I interned again. And that time, I got to do some more stuff. And they said, hey, you know what? We're going to be hiring a phone screener here relatively soon. We don't know when. We'd like that to be you. And I said, great. I'm going back to school. Let me know what's going on, and we'll get it figured out. When in about April, the middle of April, right before I graduated, 2005, I got a call from Bill, and he said, hey, you know what, this is going to happen. Why don't you come up and be with us?
And was this you were still being a phone screener at that time when he called you up?
Yeah, so I was in college, finishing up my last semester, and then when I got done, I came up and I was phone screening as an intern. It wasn't a paid position for about 3 months.
Okay. Now, what does a phone screener do? I mean, I've heard that terminology,
right.
You know.
So you call into a radio station, and there's lots of people who call in. So essentially, all I did was, you know, you make it sure that the crappy phone callers don't get through. That's it. It's like, hey, what do you want to talk to them about? And if they're interesting or if they can put two thoughts together, then you let them through. But if it's like, oh, hey, how's it going? Fart, you know, it's like these guys.
What was the craziest call you ever got?
Oh, geez. I don't know that there's always the people who call in upset about something. You know, I can't believe you guys would talk about this. You guys are so disrespectful to insert whatever minority group it could be.
Yeah.
You know, handicapped people, or you to Mormons, or to African American people. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Pet owners. You know, we've had people like
people
that.
Being ridiculous.
Yeah, just people going, and typically it was people that either didn't hear the first part of the conversation, where they would have figured out that we weren't being serious with what we were talking about, or people who didn't hear it altogether, and someone else told them about it, and they got fired up and decided to call and talk to us about it.
I got you. So that was probably an interesting job.
Yeah. Yeah, I still do a lot of it with what I do now, but on top of that, I do all the other producing jobs.
So what do you do now then? What is your role with the Radio from Hell?
So I produce the show. So essentially what that means is 90 to 95% of the guests that we have on the show are people that I've booked, that I've either found them or coordinated to get them in the studio. We also, like most of the news prep stuff, printing it out and making sure we got it in an order that we're going to present it in, making sure that things are up on our Facebook page, using a lot of our Facebook and Twitter to, get out to people. Probably my favorite part of what I do as far as producing goes is planning events.
Okay.
So every year we do the Radio from Hell Film Festival. We do, what else? There's kind of fun stuff that we do. We go up to Sundance and we do that. We've done in the past things like 10 Cities in 10 Days where we take the show.
So you get to go out and be part of it with the public.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's my favorite part is to do the interacting kind of bigger event things. Okay. Some of the stuff like planning out exactly how the show is going to go, or some of that stuff, it gets a little tedious.
And plus, getting up early in the morning must.
Yeah, it's not bad because the way I look at it is a lot of people get up and go to work, but they go to work all the time that the sun is out. Yeah. And I get up and go to work while it's still dark and it's terrible and I'm, miserably tired and you don't feel like dealing with people and stuff like that. But then I get done and I still have
the rest of the day.
The rest of the day.
So I need one of those jobs.
Yeah. You can have mine.
Yeah, I can have it. Well, okay, there you go.
Done.
So at what point did you decide to start your own podcast then, the Culture Hall podcast? Like you were already working with what you're doing now. Mm-hmm. And you haven't started up the podcast yet, right? Or when did you start the Culture Hall?
So the Cultural Hall actually kind of came about in a few ways.
Share that
First
story.
of all, you can find it, I should say, theculturalhall.com, just www.theculturalhall.com.
Okay.
We're also on Twitter and Facebook. I'm going to use that as an opportunity to plug it.
No. I want you to plug it away, and I'll put all the links on the show notes.
Cool.
So people can. It's a cool podcast, by the way, and I'm not even Mormon. So.
Good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you got some. I like the tattoo.
The tattooed Mormon.
Yeah,
she was cool.
Yeah. That was really cool to hear that.
So how it came about is I really owe a lot of the idea generation from Geek Show Podcast. You can find them at geekshowpodcast.com.
Yeah.
Kerry, one of the hosts of Radio from Hell, he I guess it's been 5 years now. 5 years ago, he said, you know what, we're going to do this Geek Show thing as a podcast. Up to that point, they'd just done like specials on the air every once in a while. If Bill and Gina couldn't be around, he would have all the guys from Geek Show come in. And then they would do a live Geek Show talking about all this stuff. And people really liked it. And so he decided, with the onslaught of podcasts, he decided to make it a thing. And I thought, I want to have a podcast. I'd like to do something. What do I know a lot about? And I was like, well, I'm not really a geek guy. I'm not really a movie guy. I like going to movies, but, they're far superior, movie geek folks. Plus, there's a million movie podcasts. But I was like, you know what? A Mormon podcast. I know a lot about Mormons. I like being a Mormon. I know a lot of Mormons. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I want to do a Mormon podcast. Well, and then it was, to me, it's funny that you joke about the name, like as far as Richie T goes.
Yeah.
Because the name for me in a lot of these things is like the most important thing,
You think so? It kind of distinguishes who you are.
Yeah.
And I mean, everybody, Richie T. Okay. Yeah. There's a name you remember. I guess.
You know who it is. And I like to think that I've built up, if you can say, a brand of Richie T where you go, with Richie T, I know what I'm getting. I'm getting, high energy. There's, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's the same way for you. It's I Am Salt Lake podcast. I love it because it's, what is it? It's Salt Lake. This is what it is. This thing is everything that's Salt Lake. Maybe it's, food in Salt Lake or people of Salt Lake or culture of Salt Lake. But what it is it's Salt Lake. You're not going to get on and go, I wonder what Nevada thinks. It's Salt Lake. So the name thing was the big deal for me. And, I didn't want it to be like, the Nyuk Nyuk and Green Jello podcast because I was like, that's not what it is. And so we came up with the Cultural Hall.
Which everybody goes to play basketball.
Yeah, it's where it's part of the church, but it's kind of the, it's kind of the fun part of the church.
It's the best part of the church.
It's where you do the basketball, you do the socials, you have the food, you do the weddings in the Cultural Hall. And so it's kind of, for me, it could be, like I felt like it was sort of symbolic of like, okay, well, it's within the church, but it's not, serious. Like if we called it the chapel, then that seems like that's going to be pretty doctrinally based. And if, anyway, so we just were like, oh, the cultural hall. Well, then I wanted it to be something that people could find really easy. So I wanted theculturalhall.com. Well, the guy who owned theculturalhall.com is also the same guy who owns Mormon Stories, and a lot of people will know who this is if they follow this at all. His name is John DeLynn, and
I've heard that name. Yeah.
He's huge in the Mormon podcast community, and so he owned it, and so it took me 2.5 years to talk him into selling me the URL.
And he probably sold it for a pretty penny.
He he was actually really fair, because I think what it ultimately came down to is he could tell that I was excited about doing it, and he wasn't really doing anything with it.
Okay.
I said, you know what? Here, this is what I'm thinking about doing. I want to do it. Let's do it. And he said no. And then I think it was 24 or 48 hours later that he's like, you know what? Why don't you do it?
Yeah.
So, once we had that, then it was just a matter of finding who to host it with, and that's kind of been a process.
Why didn't you just do it yourself? Like kind of like how I'm doing this. I mean, just take it on yourself. Why'd you feel you needed to have a host with you?
Well, it's kind of been an interesting evolution as well. For me, I feel like a lot of the humor that I can bring to something, as you can tell by how hilarious this podcast is so far.
Yeah. Well, no, because I mean, I've thought about bringing having a host or bringing somebody on with me. But it just seems like there's so many challenges with that as far as scheduling, interest. I mean, just even butting heads with ideas.
Sure.
And you seem like the type of person who it's like you like it to be your way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't mean that in a bad way, but you're definitely take the bull by the horns type of guy.
Well, and that's where there has been some of that stuff going along. Initially, it was myself and another woman, and that's, I mean, you explained exactly what happened.
Yeah.
She had some different ideas, and I said, well, guess whose idea this was? Mine. Sorry, you're out. But the banter between two people, to me, I think is fascinating. I think where you do interviews, I mean, that's you and another person, and that can be the banter.
Yeah.
But the cultural hall, I wanted it to be more than just...
Well, like kind of like you have art, news and like you call it the articles of faith or
articles of news
or something like and so it does help to have somebody there kind of to talk,
to bouncing off of and everything like that. So I knew that I wanted that, and then it's very much a thing. It's really hard, where it doesn't really make any money to be like, hey, other person, I want you to be as committed to this as I am and work around my schedule. And
which is tough, by the way, because I mean, me and you, we've been trying to get you on this podcast forever.
What's 6 months?
Yeah.
But I mean, it really is. It's one of those things where now I feel like I've got a community of people that are willing to come together, and no one's on it every week like I am, but it's a group of people that people go, oh man, I really connect with Rob, or I really connect with Brienne. There's, these different people that are on with me, and we have a relationship.
How did you find those people?
Just people from life.
Just life
people. Different things. One was on the radio with me in college. One was an old roommate. One was a girl that I performed in a theater show with. One was actually a previous guest, and the connection when she was on as a guest was so great that I was like, would you ever, be considered or consider doing something like this? She's like, yeah, you bet. So, and there's always people kind of filtering in and out of it.
So what was it like doing the first episode? I mean,
it's terrible.
It's the same thing with what I got. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, What kind of obstacles did you face in the beginning? And I mean, what do you know now that you wish you would have known in the beginning? And
I think it's funny, actually, if you go back and listen to the first episode, and you can on iTunes of the Cultural Hall.
You ever thought about taking it down?
No.
No.
I
mean, I've never listened to the first episode of yours, so I don't know how bad it is.
Did you put up the first of yours and keep it up?
It's still there. I want to take it down just because it's like, gosh, that's just horrible. I mean,
right.
I didn't know what I was doing. I was recording.
I think the first line of the Cultural Hall, I think we say something like, I say something like, well, I guess this is how this starts. Like literally, that's, it was just a creation where we go, well, here goes. We'll see what happens from all this.
Yeah.
And And I've been really pleased with it. As far as, things that I wish that I would have realized or done differently, I don't think that I realized how much time goes into something like this.
Geez, yeah.
It's unbelievable. And
the editing, the finding, because you have guests on your show, right? Yeah, from time to time.
Well, we have a guest typically once a week, and then we do an articles of news once a week. So 2 hours of original content.
So do you do 2 episodes a week then?
There's an articles of news once a week, and then an interview once a week. So yeah, essentially 2 episodes a week. But the thing for me where I feel more responsible and kind of feel of a shortcoming is with these articles of news, like there's a lot of stuff that's kind of breaking, and to have it be just once a week seems almost irresponsible.
Yeah.
Like the Mormon Church and the Boy Scouts and the gays, like it seems like
that was big.
Yeah. But to say, okay, we'll get to that on Monday kind of seems irresponsible, where people are like, I wonder what the Cultural Hall thinks about it. I wonder what,
Do you find, do you get a lot of interaction with people with your news, controversy, stuff like that?
Sure.
And kind of helps stir up a little bit of topic discussion, I guess.
Certainly. Like today I'm sitting here thinking, and I don't know when you're going to post this, but I don't care. But the sentencing or the trial with Jodi Arias is supposed to potentially end today. She's the woman who killed her boyfriend. She's a Mormon lady down in Arizona, killed her boyfriend. She says it was in self-defense. Prosecution says it was in murder and cold blood. And we'll probably record our articles of news today, and then that'll end up coming out.
Okay.
And so then it'll be, like I feel a responsibility to be like, okay, hey, and tomorrow, because this news came out, this big thing for the LDS Church, we'll have a special episode. And so that's the thing that at this point, right now, because of my day job, and because the podcast could essentially be a day job if I really wanted to take it super seriously, it just doesn't pay any money.
Yeah,
it's kind of finding that time where it's like, okay, at what point do I say that's going to be the limit of it?
Yeah. So who have you had on your show? How do you find the people that come onto your show, or is there any kind of ideas behind that, or
if it's interesting to me?
Because it doesn't always have to be Mormon related, right?
No. They typically will find a way to relate it back to Mormonism, but no, it doesn't always have to be quote unquote Mormon related. But if it's interesting to me, then that's how I kind of glean it. I go, is that interesting to me? And there's some things that admittedly anyone who listens to the Cultural Hall goes, Richie, no one is interested in church history that much. No one cares. That's just your nerdy thing. Facebook has been really big about a lot of those breaking things. You mentioned the Tattooed Mormon episode. She wrote a blog that talks about her experience being here in Utah as a tattooed Mormon. And, that went viral.
Just being in Utah with tattoos in general, with tattoos, that's tough whether you're Mormon or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, she relates an experience where she was holding a Mormon book, and, a gentleman comes up and kind of talks to her about it. And, a really pretty sweet story that she shared, but it, seeing the virality, if that's a word, that it went once it was online, it was like, oh man, we gotta get her and we gotta talk to her. Mm-hmm. And then there's other things that are kind of no brainers, like the Neon Trees. A couple of the guys in Neon Trees are Mormon, and really Mormon at that.
Really?
And so
I'll have to listen to that episode.
Yeah,
I haven't listened.
It's episode 10.
Okay.
The Brandon Campbell is who we talked to in that one. He's the bassist. And, there's stuff like that where it's like, yeah, no brainer. Neon Trees, huge band right now. Bassist is Mormon. Let's talk about being in a Mormon rock band. And then there's other people that,
you've had Gina from X96 on the show,
had
right?
Gina. She's Catholic. And the way that we talk about that was just talking, part of that was just, I wanted to have an excuse to talk to Gina.
Yeah, why not, right?
And then the other part of it was just to have a conversation where it doesn't have to be, I'm right, you're wrong, or here, let me show you, what you're not doing the right way. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, hey, here's how two people can get together and talk about their things and be respectful and informative about the Mormon Church.
Have you ever had the Mormon Church contact you regarding your podcast at all?
Nope.
Has there been any kind of negative feedback from the higher ups? Or
nope.
I don't know what you would call them.
The general authorities.
The general authorities.
Yeah, no, there's never been anything like that. And
but you don't. It's not like you're doing anything bad. It's
no.
You're just kind of taking a different twist to to it. And
a little maybe more liberal and progressive than the main thrust of the church is.
Yeah.
But no, I would never let someone come on and just say, here's what I hate about the church. Oh, the Mormons are a bunch of, that's something that I wouldn't allow to happen.
Yeah, yeah. You're pretty active in the Mormon church, right? Yeah, you're pretty.
Couple callings.
You're a Boy Scout leader? No?
No.
I mean, that's just a big calling, right?
No, that's forever time. I know what joke you were making, pal.
No.
No, I actually teach the 12-year-old Sunday school, and I teach elders quorum. So the men.
Awesome. Awesome.
But yeah.
Not rumor. I mean, you've written it online yourself. You're kind of interested in starting another podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you care to talk a little bit about that? I'm kind of intrigued because I've always thought that'd be fun to do another one.
Yeah.
I mean, just kind of that same idea.
The other, I've talked about doing another podcast, and it's just because though with the Cultural Hall, I can kind of bring in a lot of stuff. There always is that
other thing that just doesn't fit it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of how it is with this one. It's like, gosh, there's always that other person I could talk to or that other idea I have, but it doesn't fit into the Salt Lake City mode.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyways.
So for me, that's just
because you interview bands and stuff, right?
I do a lot with work recently. It seems like I've been interviewing bands and, pretty big name bands. I mean, I got to talk with the folks, Paramore and Airborne Toxic Event, just most recently are what come to mind. But there's not like a kind of a residing place for all of them. Like the Cultural Hall, they're all available at theculturalhall.com. You can go, you can find them there, you can find them on iTunes. But with the ones with these bands I'm doing, sometimes they end up on SoundCloud, sometimes they're just on X96's website. And
you need to do like RichieT.com or something.
It actually is RichieTSteadman.com.
Oh, okay.
And that's where it'll end up going. But I don't have a really good name for it yet. I've hit it up a couple of times on Facebook asking people, like I've got a lot of like Richie T ramblings and,
do you think you really will run with it? Do you think you really will do another podcast?
Yeah. I think so. It won't be as active as the Cultural Hall is.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that I will have as much commitment to be like 2 episodes a week.
Yeah.
I think
maybe an episode every 2 weeks or something.
Or just, I think what it'll probably be is not even a timeline thing, is it's like, hey, I had to interview this band, this author, this, whatever. Or someone sent me a really funny email asking me a question. And, so now I'm going to just audio respond to this email. And it may be 30 seconds or it may be, 20 minutes, but just have that to go. I'm sounding off. In fact, maybe that's a good title of it. But just sounding off on something and going, and there it is. And that's it.
I like it.
Yeah, maybe.
I really hope you run with it.
Yeah, I hope it works.
I've listened to some of your other interviews with like bands and stuff like that. And I mean, you do a great job at it.
Thank you.
So I think you should run with it so it gets, out there
huge.
And more people can listen to it instead of just trying to, whether they're following you on Facebook or I don't know how active you are on Twitter. But
I'm not good at it.
You're not a big Twitterer.
Well,
See, I love Twitter. I love Twitter more than Facebook. I don't know. I've always just been that way.
It's just so much. That's the thing.
You think
like
so?
I mean, not Twitter over Facebook, but it's like to do Facebook really well and then to do Twitter really well. It's like, sorry, sweetheart. I guess I'll see you tonight when you go to bed.
Yeah.
When I'm done, trying to do all this promotion stuff through all these things.
Yeah.
The thing that I like about Twitter is I like using it when I do, and I don't do this often enough, but having 140 characters or less to try and make a joke about something going on. That's what I like about Twitter. The hashtag and following all that stuff, I kind of just go.
Yeah, I don't really get into the hashtag thing, but I just like it because it's a lot less intimidating to follow somebody. I think on Twitter versus Facebook, it's like, if you go to add somebody as a friend on Facebook, then they're going to be like, well, who is this creepy guy? You know?
You're not that creepy.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
So you stay pretty busy. I mean, what motivates you? What keeps you wanting to stay so busy? I mean, most people just work a 9 to 5 and come home and sit on the couch with a 6-pack.
Sure.
And I mean, you're a busy guy.
It's kind of just always been the mode of how I've been. So I don't know that I know really what it is. Part of it, at least recently, is my wife is studying to get her CPA, and that is all encompassing.
Okay.
That's hours upon hours. She does an amazing job. She works full time, and then she also studies probably like 3 or 4 hours a day. So part of that is just keeping myself entertained.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how this podcast was born, that I'm doing, So.
Yeah. So that's part of it. But then I really like, I like the challenge of new things. And some people would say, well, he just doesn't know what he wants. And I think that probably is a little bit true. But I like kind of putting my mind to something and being like, you know what? I've never created a comedy festival. I wonder what it would be like to create a comedy festival.
And you did a comedy.
I did.
Yeah.
So that was one of those things where I was like, well, what would I call it? Well, I want it to be here in Salt Lake. It's a comedy festival. We'll call it the Salt Lake Comedy Festival. That way people know what it is and where it's at. You can find it at saltlakecomedyfestival.com. But the first year, the partner and I, we tried to figure it out, and we did okay at some things and just bombed.
Talk a little bit about that now that you brought that up. How many? So you've done it multiple years?
We just finished the third year, and I feel like it went better this year than ever before. Last year we lost money like crazy.
And when is that for people listening?
It's always the second week in April.
Okay, so it just barely happened.
Just about a month ago.
Just like local stand-ups, or
so it's a combination of all things comedy. With the hopes of kind of making it bigger as the years go on. I mean, I think Sundance started as really super local and then kind of blossomed into what Sundance Film Festival to be. But it's we do a night of stand-up comedy, and then we do a lot of improv because that's kind of where my background as far as that stuff goes. And then we do comedy film, and then we kind of do a night that's a combination of a bunch of stuff. Okay. Stand-up, improv, and, the film and everything like that. And so this last year we did it a Monday through Friday. As we're looking towards next year, we're probably going to do like a Wednesday through Saturday, just because we've tried to find what the exact right fit is. We did some things this year that we went, man, this is a great thing, but we did it on the wrong night. Yeah. It'd be better if we would have done it at this kind of a venue, that kind of stuff. But we were able to donate like $315 or so to the Huntsman Cancer Institute this year. So
that's rad.
So that was pretty cool. That's something that we kind of took on as part of it.
Do you get up and do stand-up or no?
I have. I don't at the festival. It seems a little pretentious to me to be like, hey, I created a festival. Now watch how funny I am.
Yeah. So do you go down to like Wise Guys on Wednesday and do that? Yeah.
There's some videos of me doing it, and it's miserable. There's a couple things that hit, but I haven't really put a lot of focus, as much focus as I probably should on stuff like that.
Cool. So you do the podcast. What else do you? I mean, what else don't I know? Maybe that. You do?
Let's see. What else might I do that you wouldn't know?
Do you do anything with dancing? You mentioned dance.
I don't.
Or acting.
I don't really too much. I do stuff at Desert Star Theater as an actor. It's out in Murray. I'll usually do a couple shows there a year. Typically in the wintertime.
What was the last show you did there?
The last show I did there was a show called Board of the Rings. Breaking the Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings spoof, and I played Ken Jennings, the guy who won a bunch of money on Jeopardy.
Yeah, you should get him on your podcast.
We've been in discussion about it. He lives up in Washington. It would have been easier when he was still living here in Utah.
Well, Skype or something.
Well, no, I can do it over the phone. It's just it's easier if I see them around and go, "Hey, you, let's do this." Than the intimidating guy on the phone or whatever. So I'll do that kind of stuff, and then I'm also. In addition to all that, I kind of do the husband and fathering. I've got a 15-year-old kid who, we get stuff figured out. He's about to get done with 9th grade and go into high school. So that's all sorts of.
Wow. So you got a kid and
a wife,
and
a house.
the white picket fence, right?
Yeah. Well, no picket fence. I don't want to have to paint it every year.
Yeah. Yeah. So being a podcaster, being a podcaster, I always like to find out. Do you listen to a lot of podcasts yourself, or
I listen to some?
What podcasts do you enjoy?
I love
just because I always like recommendations myself.
I love, and this is perhaps something that I shouldn't admit. I love WTF with Mark Maron.
I love that show.
You
shouldn't admit that.
It is so filthy.
Yeah.
Filthy language, I should say. It's not, it's not vulgar, I don't think. But the way that I love his conversation.
Yeah.
And the way that he interviews people. For people who don't know, Mark Maron he's a stand-up comedian, and now he's actually got a TV show on. And
have you watched that yet?
I haven't.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet either.
But his just kind of stream of conscious thought and the way that he talks with people, I really like that. I've listened a little bit to Sklar Country, whatever the Sklar brothers are. They're
not familiar with that.
Two twin stand-up comedians that they're pretty funny. I think it's scarboroughcountry.com or something like that. And then, I'll pick up here and there every once in a while. Someone will say, hey, you know what, would you be interested in coming on our podcast? And so I'll check that out.
What other good local ones? Every so often I'll find out about another good local Salt Lake podcast that I wasn't familiar with. Maybe you know of some.
There is one. I want to say it's like something to the moon. Something.
Yeah. The House on the Moon. The House on the Moon. I think.
House on the Moon.
Yeah, I've heard.
Whatever.
Yeah.
They interviewed me, and those guys were really fun. I don't know. I only listened to a portion of one episode, and I was like, you know what? Who am I? Of course, I'll do this episode with them. But those guys were pretty funny.
And then there's a Let's Go Eat show.
Yeah, I'll drop into the Let's Go Eat show, hosted by Bill Allred. That's letsgoeatshow.com. Geek Show, I'll occasionally, if the tease is really good. Again, I don't really get into that stuff very much, but geekshowpodcast.com.
I just was curious if there was any other little secret ones that don't publicize as well as they should. That
I know that the one that, and I don't even know what it's called. That I want to say it's the folks at Slug.
Oh, Sound Waves from the Underground.
Is what it's called.
Yeah.
I've listened into that a few times, mainly because it's my brother does a bit on there because he's the community director for Yelp.
Yeah, Jeffrey. Great guy, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great guy, by the way.
I aspire to be like him one day.
Yeah.
But I think they do a really good job at being local. And then there are things that kind of come and go all the time.
Cool.
Locally.
So, okay, getting on to locally, I always like to ask the people that come onto my show, what are some of your favorite things about Salt Lake City? You live in the city. I mean, you were born and raised here in Salt Lake, right?
Yep.
So you've lived here a long time. You've seen the city change. You've seen it go through its cycles. What do you like about it here? Let's be honest.
Let's throw it down, huh? Yeah. I like the food is what's coming to my mind right now.
Which I was going to ask you, what some of your favorite local eateries are. I'm sure Jeffrey helps you out with introducing you to.
But he can't sway me all the time. I have my own favorites.
Does he get you to check in on Yelp at places and stuff like that?
He'll say, hey, why don't you check in or give a review? And I'll say, stop bossing me. If we're talking like literal Metro Salt Lake, the places that I think of are Gourmandise, the bakery down on, I want to say that's like 3rd East and 3rd South. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I can get you there.
Yeah, I can get you there.
But it's a French kind of pastry shop. The guy that owns the place and cooks for the place is French. They have the most amazing desserts and a grilled cheese that just kicks my butt. I love it so much. And then I think of like finer dining, and I think of Faustina is really delicious.
It's great food.
There's something for me about going to the food court at the Gateway that I just love.
I used to work at the Gateway, and all that there used to be to choose from was McDonald's at one time. Yeah. Now the food court there is actually pretty good.
A little bit more elaborate, but I love I just love watching all the people there. The food is not necessarily anything spectacular, but the going and getting something and then just watching the hordes of people get their food and have to deal with their kids in the food and all that kind of stuff. And then bringing it broader out, I love the soup kitchen. I'm a sucker for over in Sugar House, 20th
It's on
20th South and 11th East.
Yeah. Great
the
sandwiches.
Soup kitchen right there. And just kind of a cool, essentially just a dive. I love just going in and having grilled cheese sandwich and a bowl of chicken noodle soup, which doesn't go together, but it's fantastic. And then
it goes together if you want it to.
Yeah. And then bigger, wide in the valley, just worth tossing it out for people that think that there's no good places to eat in the south part of the valley, because that's where my wife and kid and I live. There is a 3-restaurant chain. What is his name? Hold on. It is the restaurants are the Wild Rose, Tiburon, and Epic, and his name is the name of the salad that I get all the time. Why can't I think of what it's called? Anyway, there's 3 restaurants. One's on Fort Union and about 7th East. One's on about 8600 South and 7th East. And then one's all the way out in the district. And they're really good food in the south part of the valley. Everyone's always like, oh, you have to go downtown to get really good food. You don't have to.
Huh. You'll have to, if you ever think of the name, you'll have to email me. I'm curious now.
It's got, the candied pecans. I want to say Todd, but that's not what it's called.
It's all good. Do you ever get up to the food trucks? Do you ever try any of the food trucks downtown?
Sure. And I recently, here's something that someone told me. If you get lingua tacos, tongue, that's the way to go from some of these.
Who was I talking to? Somebody that just had a tongue taco.
And I'm told, and I've not tried it yet, but this is something I want to do in the next couple of weeks, is try the tongue taco. Because from what I understand, it's like a really, really soft roast beef.
But it's like having another tongue in your mouth, you know?
They tell me if you do it right, although that wouldn't be too bad. Yeah. They tell me that if you do it right, it's just like the most tender roast beef ever. I don't know.
That name's still bugging you,
Yeah, the
right?
name of that salad, I can't think of it.
You get into any of the local music at all in Salt Lake?
Sure.
Because like, what was it? Peter Breinholt or something has been on your podcast, right?
Yeah, we've had Peter Breinholt on. There is the most amazing guitarist. She's like 16 or 17 years old.
That was on your podcast. I listened to that
Ellie
episode.
Duke, and she
that was a great episode.
Not only just so gorgeous, but just so tremendously talented. I think that she's great. There's a band where, I mean, he's super charismatic, and I think that they'll end up, making a splash on the scene, but he just left on a mission. These all seem to be Mormon related, but it's just coincidental. It was a band.
I expected that when I sat down with you, that we'd talk Mormonism.
Bobby and the Tiger, I think is what it's called. Another band, a really kind of cool sound if you like Blink-182. I think they're out of Orem, but Chasing Chance is a band that's local that I really like. We've worked with a few times through work, and I think he's a really, really good guy. Ransom Widener of Widener? Ransom is his first name, of King Nico.
Okay.
He's a really cool, really talented guy. I think he was on The Voice or something like that for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing with between Provo and between Salt Lake. There's so much good music here.
Yeah.
And people are always like, oh, yeah, well, it's not like. No, it is like. You just need to go to the places and see some of these bands because you have really talented musicians that come out of Utah all the time.
Oh, absolutely. What are you looking forward to this summer? Summer's right around the corner. I mean, it's pretty much here. Mm-hmm. What are you looking for? What's Richie T?
What's my summer?
What are you looking forward to and makes you excited for this summer?
I'm going to Alaska.
Oh, okay. So you're doing a little travel.
Yeah, doing a little travel. I'm going to go to Jackson Hole. And then my wife got us roped into a timeshare discussion thing or whatever down in Las Vegas, where it's like, come down and we'll give you this for free or whatever.
Yeah.
We got roped into that. So I think that will be fun. A buddy of mine, he and I, and hopefully our kids are going to go hike to the top of Kings Peak. It's like 13,000 feet, something ridiculous. You got to camp overnight. And that, to me, I kind of like that extreme stuff. Warp Tour this year, I'm pretty stoked for.
Do you know any of the bands playing?
No, and that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. So through work, I'm going to go out.
You probably
and
got good connections with all that.
Yeah, I'm going to go out and do like 30 interviews in like 4 hours and just boom, boom, boom. We've started to talk to these bands, and I'm excited about it because I know that some of these bands are going to be bands that people go, holy crap, you sat down with whatever the band was in 2 years and be like, yeah. I did that.
Who would be your dream interview?
Are we talking bands or are we just talking in general?
You were talking interviews, so it made me think of that question.
Let's see. If we're talking bands, who would be my ultimate sit down with a band?
Yeah.
I mean, it's no way possible. So let me give you two answers.
Yeah.
I would love to sit down with the Beatles.
Well,
of olden times, but
I appreciate your honesty because that's the kind of answer I want. So.
But like nowadays, bands still together, I think it would be just awesome to sit down with the guys of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think that'd be cool just to kind of see.
What about Slayer? Could you imagine Richie T sitting down with Slayer or something like that?
That's cool. No, I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
But then, strangely enough, if I could sit down in an interview with just anyone before he passes away, I'll figure out a way to do this. I want to sit down with Alan Alda, who a lot of people probably don't know who that is. If you saw the movie Tower Heist, he's the bad guy on Tower Heist.
Okay.
If you watched MASH, he was Hawkeye Pierce on MASH.
Okay.
And he's done a zillion things, but for whatever reason, growing up, MASH was a show that I absolutely loved, and I shouldn't have. I was a little too young to have really
that was
loved it.
Something I shouldn't have known about.
But I really got into it and just loved it. And so, knowing that, he's getting older or whatever, I'd love to sit down and honestly, probably just tell him, hey, thanks for everything that you've done. And then just fumble through questions going, thanks. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, Richie. And anything else you want to add, or go ahead and give your links again to get in touch with you.
Sure.
Or anything else you want to add before we close out here?
Well, this will just be a big link fest, so let's go. So if you want to find out more about Radio from Hell, it's on iTunes. You can download and subscribe to that, or you can just find it at x96.com. The Cultural Hall is available on the radio in southern Utah.
Really?
Yeah, you can actually hear it over the radio, or you can subscribe to it on iTunes, or you can get it on Stitcher. So you can find it there. It's just the Cultural Hall on all of those things. You can go to theculturalhall.com and get it that way. We also do blogs in addition to the podcast, and we have a lot of really talented writers of stuff that do that. You can follow us on Twitter at The Cultural Hall, and our Pinterest woman, her name is Carly. She's out of Arizona. She's phenomenal. She gets Pinterest, and So
you don't get on Pinterest and do it.
I said, you know what? You are the perfect person to do this, and she is. She is the perfect person to do what she's doing. So
yeah.
You can find us on Pinterest. Follow us at The Cultural Hall. As far as
what about you? Can people follow you at all, or add you as a friend on Facebook?
Yeah. There's I have two pages. One is like a fan page. It's just Richie T, RICHIE. And that's the fan page. Richie T. Steadman is how you can friend me on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter at Richie T. Steadman. And then Salt Lake Comedy Festival is saltlakecomedyfestival.com. And I think it's SLC Comedy Fest if you follow us on Twitter.
Okay.
But that's a great way if you're you're thinking about getting into the comedy scene in Salt Lake. You're thinking, oh man, everyone always tells me that I'm funny, that kind of stuff. Yeah. It seems like we get a lot of people, and we've really helped a lot of the. With being now 3 years in, there are a few people that attended the comedy festival their first year. We have classes and stuff like that, and have now started to make a pretty good name for themselves here locally. So if that's something that you're interested in.
Well, and I'll try to get all those links.
Sure.
As many as I can.
I'm terrible at it, so if you don't do any of them, that's fine.
And on the show notes, and I appreciate you. So this is where we're talking now, is where you do a lot of your recordings for the Cultural Hall podcast. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate you letting me use this spot, and appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate you being here with me.
All right. Thanks a lot, Richie.
You bet.
Many thanks goes out to Richie T for coming on the show and sharing his story with the rest of you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation that I had with him. I enjoyed talking with him. Again, you could check out all of the show notes to get in touch with all of his projects at iamsaltlake.com/episode 68. You can listen to all the previous episodes actually right there online at iamsaltlake.com. We're also on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, as well as the Mediocre Radio Network, which you can find at mediocreradionetwork.com, streaming 24/7. A lot of great podcasts on the Mediocre Radio Network. Check that out. Get involved. Hey, I got a voicemail line, 385-202-5926. Give me a call. Any upcoming events that you want me to play on a future episode? If you have any feedback, suggestions, or if you just want to say hello, I love to hear from my listeners. All of the contact information is right there on the podcast website. Get in touch with me. I am saltlake@gmail.com. If you know anybody who would like to come on the podcast that's doing something really cool here in Salt Lake City, I'd love to bring you on. All right. I think that's going to about do it for episode 68. I'm going to be back on Sunday. I got a brand new episode featuring somebody really cool here in the Salt Lake City area doing some cool stuff. So hopefully you guys can join me. And until then, you guys have a great day and a great evening, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot.